So welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success story, a series of interviews where we discuss with local business leaders, their backgrounds, their successes and challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning, I'm delighted to have with us Ian McCann, who's Director at Consultant Solicitors. So Ian, welcome and thank you for coming on board. And if you'd like to introduce yourself and your business to the audience, that would be wonderful.
Thanks, Chris, and thank you very much for having me. I'm very grateful. So I'm Ian McCann. I'm one of the directors and the CEO at Legal Studio. We exist to help lawyers enjoy work. So that's what we do. How we do that is we give lawyers the freedom and the flexibility to effectively start their own legal business, but without the compliance, the insurance, the overhead cost and the headache of creating their own practice, but all within an environment where they have a collegiate and supportive team of other contemporaries and lawyers and a back office provided by us that helps them actually focus on what they're good at and what they want to do, which is advising clients. The reason we do it is bluntly, myself, Matt and Hannah, the three directors of the practice, all fundamentally believe that happy lawyers are better lawyers. They're better for clients, they're better for themselves, their friends, and their families. And the way that we found to help them with their happiness is to take away the things like the targets, presenteeism, and the politic of a standard law firm, and just give them the platform to do what they do, which is good quality advice at a reasonable price. So that's who we are and what we do.
Sounds really great. I mean, it sounds really fascinating, actually, and I look forward to talking more about it. I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, I became a business coach and actually coached business coach 19 years ago because I grew a business previous to that with four other guys. We got to quite a good size, 100 people, and we make quite a lot of money, but it nearly killed me, to be perfectly frank. I was doing 100-hour weeks, didn't see a lot of the family, so it wasn't much fun. And my drive in doing what I do is to help people enjoy growing businesses, not just tolerate it and hope that the money turns up at the end. So I could see from what you said, there's quite an alignment there in specifically for your particular profession.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the reality is that people, if you look at lawyers as a kind of a horrible, gross stereotype, but the factors that make lawyers successful at what they are as lawyers, attention to detail, dedication, various bits, and effectively tipping towards that marvelous perfectionism. Well, if you build all of that into growing your own career and wanting to service clients, because you actually do want to help, and I know that might sound a little bit a kind of twee or fairy tale, but we do. We like solving problems for clients. But you build all of that together, and what you potentially have is quite a toxic mix of overwork, of dedication falling over into too much, and kind of that old classic of not only forgetting to put your own oxygen mask on first, but having the remainder of the plane evacuated in front of you, and then you popping up and seeing if you can fly it as well while everyone's on it. And that part of how that's driven is how law firms are run and have traditionally run. But the fact that society and life has moved and changed, and maybe those processes haven't. And particularly it is around targets, and particularly it's around the escalation of those targets. And my common quip is that most lawyers' performance reviews, when you as a lawyer ask the person doing the performance review, what can I give you next year? The answer is always more. And there comes a point where you can't. And from my personal experiences, which we can get into, that point where you can't can be quite significant, quite unpleasant, and have some fairly significant ramifications for you and your life. And I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy.
No, I can completely get that. It's fascinating. So it would be good actually if you maybe tell us a little bit more about your background, how you got into business, and why this particular one, which obviously you've alluded to already.
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, there's a long and winding story, which I'll condense, of qualifying as a lawyer, having that moment where I got ill, but not only did I get ill, but I had this moment that I describe as kind of my Damon Hill moment. I don't know whether this is a true story or not, but one of the stories I've heard about him is that he knew it was time to retire when the lights went green on the grid, and the first thought that went through his head was, what's the rush? And the point, I had a similar moment for me where I stopped and went, if this is the next 25 years of my life and I'm working so hard to aspire to be you, and I don't like how you're having to work, well, I'm not doing it. So I left the law for a short period, went into financial services. We all make mistakes. However, the benefit of that was it gave me two sets of skills that have kind of grounded the rest of my career. The first is how to sell, not how to shamelessly flog products, because that doesn't work, but how to actually have a conversation about needs, wants, drivers, what are you looking for, and do that. And the second was confirmation that actually I was a really good advisor and a half decent salesman, but I needed to believe in what I was selling. So I went back into the law to set up a commercial lit department at a practice, and then had a sort of second epiphany, which was, if I'm doing really well at this, in 3 years I'm disposable because it's set up and it'll work without me. If I do really badly, in 3 minutes I'm disposed. So hang on, I'm using my brain, my contacts, my skills to build something for somebody else. Well, why? You know, the only risk's the salary, and proportionate wise, that seemed to be one that I was happy to take at that time. My wife maybe needed some more convincing about this, but never mind, we did it anyway. So I joined with my one of my business partners, Matt, had set the practice up, and I joined as a consultant, brought my kind of client portfolio over, and not very long after that thought, well, hang on, he quite likes numbers and spreadsheets and accounts and processes, great. I quite like business development and people, and but the things that we both like, the other one doesn't. So if you put the two halves together, you got half a decent business. So I kind of came on board as a director at that point, and the rest is histrionics. We've gone from two blokes in a cupboard now to 3 directors and shareholders. So my colleague Hannah came on board this year, and up to 20 consultants. And so you know we've scaled significantly.
Brilliant.
There's been a lot of cock-ups along the way, but we're getting there.
Brilliant. What story? Absolutely fantastic. And now, going back to your business development point, our definition of sales and selling is professionally helping people buy what they need.
Yeah.
And brackets, if they don't need it, they don't get it. So it's that establishment of what the need is, matching it to what we do. And if there's a match, then if we're the best at what we do, it's our duty to help them see the value in what we do. And if they don't, then we move on and they move on. And that's the option too.
Absolutely. And if you sell something to someone who doesn't want to buy it, what you end up with is a customer that's pissed off. And then you end up in a toxic client relationship where they're not really a client, and the whole thing falls apart. Nobody enjoys it. Nobody gets any value. And it was basically pointless. So...
No, I totally get that. I've got a big thing about sales and selling. I run quite a lot of sales training myself. And the interesting thing is, if somebody buys something they didn't really want, who gets the blame? It's the salesperson. Now, they didn't actually make the choice. Unless they're held a gun to your head, they didn't make you buy it.
No, absolutely. But then where the failure is in that process, and the failure is a strong word, maybe where the flaw is in that process, is at that point where we've converted, we haven't started to prove the value of what we do. We haven't seen how we haven't shown them how we're solving their problem. We haven't shown them how we are helping them. And therefore that process stops working. I mean, by trade and training, I'm a commercial litigator. So I am a distressed purchase. None of my clients want to work with me. I know that, and I'm okay with that. And so I start the conversation there, which is, I know you don't want to work with me. I know you don't want to be in this situation. I know I'm an expensive pain in the backside. I understand all of that. What my job is to tell you how it is and to try and get you out of this in a way that you want. If we can achieve either of those two things, we'll call that a success. And then what I hope to do is help you solve your processes and procedures so we never need to speak again. And making myself redundant as a litigator is, as far as I'm concerned, the greatest achievement you can have.
Yeah. Got it. No, absolutely. Funny enough, it's the same with business coaching. Nobody ever wakes up in the morning saying, you know what, I want a business coach. what they say is, I'd love to get more time back from my business. I'd like to make more money. I'd like to spend more time with my family. And it's therefore understanding what is the need. The business coaching is the vehicle for that, but it's actually not selling what we do. It's selling us the outcomes, the results, the things that people really need in your litigation. I guess they need to get the outcome that they want, or that they feel they deserve. No, absolutely fascinating. So when you were growing up, is this the sort of thing you envisaged yourself doing, or did you?
That's an interesting. So when I was growing up, I wanted to be harking back to the motorsport reference. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to be an automotive engineer, and I wanted to work in motorsport. And there came a crashing realization that probably wasn't a good idea when my A-level maths. So I did maths with mechanics as an A-level, and my lovely A-level maths teacher took me to one side and said, "Look, Ian, I know you want to do this as a career, but we really do have to talk." And I said, "Oh, okay, why?" She said, "Well, there's this problem about a lift, and the speed. There's two parts to the question. The first one is estimate the speed of the lift." And that was for 1 mark. And the second part of the question was, show your workings about X, Y, and Z, and that was 8 marks. She said, you got 7 on the bottom one, but you didn't get the easy mark. And I said, well, why not? She said, well, you put the acceleration of the lift as 10 meters per second. I said, yeah, because then I could just knock it was just 1, and I could knock the 0 off the calculation before. It worked perfectly. She said, yeah, that's great. What is the speed of a body falling, an acceleration of a body falling under gravity? 9.8 meters per, So, yes, so you invented a lift that pinned people to the ceiling on the way down and pinned them to the floor on the way up. People are going to die. Please don't be an engineer. And so I was actually doing a law AS level, as it was at the time. Now, when people say why law, the honest answer is I did it for a bus pass, because there were 2 sixth form colleges equidistant from the little rural village where I grew up. The better one was in Darlington. But in order to get a free local authority bus pass, you had to do a course that the one in Barnard Castle didn't do. That was AS law. So I got my bus pass, and I fully intended to drop it after a week and do history, and I couldn't. And so between those 2 kind of events, I thought, yeah, I quite like the idea of this lawyering thing, because I'm enjoying the subject. I had wanted to be an engineer, but a maths tutor validly has said people will die, and so I'll go and have a go at this. And what I liked about it was the ability to take apart a problem, but then reassemble it in the way that you needed to get the result you wanted. And that varied every single time. And so that was quite fun. But yeah, I didn't always want to be a lawyer, but eventually it grew on me. Brilliant.
And as you've grown your business, what are some of the key challenges you've had to overcome?
I think there are kind of 2, and I think they're universal, but you don't realize they're universal until you hit them. And the first is people, and I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but you've got to get not just the right people, but the right people at the right time. And if you're there's a fundamental difference between growing something and scaling it. And so kind of dropping people in at the wrong times, they might be brilliant at what they do, but if you're not quite there yet, or the curve alters of the trajectory, then they can become a real, you can end up with a real challenge about, we've got this person, they are brilliant, they're doing what but we're not quite there yet. And so you're kind of having to have either difficult conversations, or kind of realizing that you've kind of put someone put something in the wrong place at the wrong time, or you've got the wrong person. They've got the skills, but they just don't fit for whatever reason.
Yes.
And so kind of learning to deal with that when the kind of driver of what we do is enjoyment and well-being, and it has been a real personal challenge for me, because whilst some people may consider me to be the devil incarnate, and I'm sure there are a number of people out there that do, I could name some of them, but I won't. I try to, where I can, do the right thing in the right way. Yeah. But sometimes that's hard, and it's not a pleasant conversation. The second thing I think that kind of has been the challenge for me personally, and growing the business which relates to that, is delegation. And it's realizing that not only do you have a finite amount of hours in the day, but you also have a finite amount of talent. And there's that slight imposter syndrome of, well, but I mean, it can't be that I'm more important than doing this job. That's not what it is. It's not that you're more, it's not that you're saying you're better or more, it's just you're saying your talents can be utilized to generate revenue or process or people here. This thing is taking you away from what you're good at.
Yep.
So delegate it effectively and make it work. And, you know, we are at the point where we've got a really good team behind us. We need to kind of shape and adjust that team as the business grows and changes and its needs, the needs of our consultants change. But I think we're starting to get there. But it is, for me, hands up on that perfectionism that I mentioned about lawyers before. That's been hard, and
yes,
you can't. But there's that moment where you finally realize it, that you can't grow it if you're doing all of it, and you can't. And that's, you know, you've got a decision to make then. You either stop at the size you are and try and work out how to make it more profitable. But the thing is, with our model, that doesn't really work. We have to grow it to a certain point for it to be sufficiently profitable. And so you've got to, you've got to grasp that nettle at some point.
100%. 100%. I mean, Michael Gerber would say, you know, a business is like a tree; it's either growing or dying. So actually staying the same isn't really an option, because the world changes around us. So we have, we have to. But no, it's a great point. I often say, and you know, the challenges you face are very common in many businesses. And I speak to business owners regularly that say, look, you know, I want to feel a team that I'm one of them. I'm gonna do things. And I said, well, imagine you're on a ship. Yeah, if you really needed some help to hoist the sails or pull the anchor up, maybe that's useful every now and again to be willing to do it. But if you're helping them pick the sails up, they're actually saying, who's steering the ship? Your job is steering the ship. So doing the hard work with the guys is not what they want you to do. They actually want you to be in command, in control. Because if you're not, then the ship might crash and we all die. And it's understanding that, I think, Ian, that once we get that our job is doing it. But the second challenge that we've seen is that, and I think you alluded to it earlier, is that being good at what we do doesn't necessarily make us good at running a business.
Goodness, no, yeah, absolutely, and that, you know, that's there's a distinction to be made between, you know, I use the phrase, you know, effectively, you can be great on the tools, right? But that is fundamentally different from, do you know 100%. How to run this? And, you know, and there, but my litany of mistakes go behind me. I've had to learn to do that, and learn that, you know, sometimes actually, and definitely as a lawyer, sometimes looking at something from a legal perspective, right? Particularly as a litigator, my job is to find risk and squash it. Right? Now, that's great.
Right, yeah.
You ain't going to build a business if every time you find a risk, you squash it. Sometimes you've got to find the risk and go, awesome, how do we make it bigger? And that's a fundamental different set of skills. And it is one of the things that is, I think, challenging with the law firm model generally, which is, as you progress through the partnership, senior associate partnership track, you're automatically promoting people who are very good on the tools to management and leadership positions where they've had no training, no support, and no idea. And so is it any wonder that they're not very good at it and that it makes them and those around them miserable? They're not doing it on purpose, and they're unquestionably trying really hard to get it right. But is that the right thing for you to be doing? And it's okay for it not to be. And that's where I think the challenge is it's all right to say to someone, you're brilliant at this, keep doing that. You're not very good at this, please stop. We'll find someone else to fill that gap.
No, 100%. One of the key concepts we work on is a guy called Brian Tracy talks about the best organizations are the ones where most people spend most of their time doing the three things they really love and they're really good at.
Yes.
And it's understanding that in an organization and valuing it potentially too. And interesting, going back to the engineering world, before at college, I remember going to a presentation by Rolls-Royce Engineering. And what has stuck with me since then, obviously it was only a couple of years ago, no, but
of course, yeah.
Of course. But what stuck with me over a very long period of time was that their structure was, when you join, after a certain induction time, it's probably quite a while, you decide whether or not you want to go up a technical engineering stream or a management stream.
Yeah.
And there are equal roles right to board level. So you could achieve a career in either, right to board level. So there was no barrier to you had to move across. Once you get good at something, you become a manager of it, because that didn't make sense. The only thing they did say was that for an 18-month period, at some point during the first, let's say 5 to 7 years, you had to swap stream for 18 months to understand what it's like on the other side, because management is a profession, it's a discipline, and it needs to be understood and valued as much as the working on the tools. And I think sometimes people work on the tools, don't value the fact of what a manager or leader does.
Absolutely, because my chap I work with calls it walking in the customer's shoes. And the reality is that you have internal customers, and no one ever thinks like, very few people think like that. You've effectively, parts of your business are purchasing services from other parts of your business. You have internal as well as external customers.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a real bugbear of mine, and particularly, I'm autistic, and both of my kids are, and it is a real bugbear of mine, particularly around kind of getting neurodivergent individuals into the workplace. Is that it's certainly in professional services firms, what we do is we look to regress people to the mean. We say, you're very good at that, you're not very good at that. So stop doing as much of the thing you're good at.
Yes.
Start doing more of the stuff that you're rubbish at, to try and get you to be average at everything.
Yeah.
And actually, for most organizations, that doesn't work, but particularly for a neurodivergent brain, it's impossible. You're asking someone to do something that they just literally are not wired up to be able to do. And you will not get any value, and you will get trouble. And so for everybody, everyone will be miserable, and it will work for no one. So why do we do it? Why don't we say, Dave, you're excellent at that, crack on with that. Jenny, you're not so hot at that thing. Don't do it anymore, but you're brilliant at this, do that. And why don't we do that? And the answer is, I think, because there's this perception, certainly within professional services, that the clients will only want to deal with one individual. Yep. No, I don't think that your client who's come for, say, setting up of a trust, they don't really want to be dealing with the lawyer about the question of, can I see your passport? Can I run it through this system? Because that then immediately triggers in the back of their brain, oh God, am I paying for this?
Yeah.
And it starts to break the relationship down at the very first part of it. And it's why you build teams, because otherwise the entire profession would consist of however many it is, 7,400 sole practitioners, which it doesn't.
I think the biggest challenge is that we teach our clients. What happens is we teach them that they only want to work with us. So and there is no other option. And by doing so, we're creating that reality. Whereas if we explain to a client, look, I'm really good at doing this bit, and that's what you're paying me for. I've got brilliant people that do the administration, and they're going to be involved in this process too. So I can focus on the really important stuff for you. Is that great? Brilliant. Fantastic. Let's crack on. And if they understand it, and as you say, I mean, having a solicitor processing some admin for me I'm sure I would have the meter running in the back of my mind, going, what's going on? How much is this costing me?
Well, exactly, and the genus of every lawyer joke ever drafted comes, and so if you compare and contrast, in professional services, I always compare and contrast law firms and accountants. And the reason I do that is because of the answer. The question is, who gets the first call when something's gone wrong? And the answer is the accountants. And the reason for that is retainer services and relationships.
Yep.
Because they don't think that by picking up the phone, someone's going to go, well, that's 6 units, I'm going to send you a bill.
Yeah.
They think, here is someone who helps me run my business. I wonder if they can help me with this.
Yeah.
And that's where, and a lot of lawyers have crossed that Rubicon, have got there, and that's great. But we really need to get the entire profession to that point, because otherwise we're just an expensive luxury as opposed to a genuine business advisor.
Yeah, no, absolutely bang on. No, I can see there's lots of commonalities of what you do, what we do. It's yeah, very much so. Okay, so what would you say are some of the biggest learnings you've had in and about business as you've developed the organisation?
I think there's two. I think the first is that the numbers don't lie, and that
Great.
You know there is that old adage about turnovers vanity, profits reality, and cash is sanity, or some other combination of those words.
Yeah.
And you know the numbers don't lie. Whether you want them to or not is a whole different question. But you've got to look at those. They have to factor into your thinking. And you know, when you are looking to build or scale, my new rule, it certainly wasn't this, I would anticipate stuff, and then we ended up, is you need, whatever it is that we think that we need to be absolutely screaming for it for 3 months before we put it in, because that means we actually need it, as opposed to we quite like it. Yeah. And you know, we have in the spirit of total candor, we've wasted a lot of money on me anticipating where that curve is going and getting it wrong. You know, the crystal ball doesn't work. You can only work it backwards on the numbers that you've got. So there you go, hands up, I've learned that one. And then the second one, though, is that having said all of that, the focus can't be the numbers. It has to be, if you focus on doing what you're doing it in the right way, and saying, this is what we offer, this is how we do it, this is how we, this is how we put it forward. If you keep consistently doing what it is that you do, mind the numbers, then it will follow, as opposed to being driven by it, because then you make a lot of very short-term poor decisions based on, well, how do I get that up? Or, well, that's not this. I mean, the numbers don't lie, but you have to look at them over a longer period of time. And during that period of time, you just have to keep doing what it is that you're doing, because once you've proved it, once you've got your minimum viable audience and you've actually proved that it works, you've got to trust it as well. And those lessons have been very hard learned, but it's kind of it's kept me, you know, I'm quite a creative person. I'm quite an opportunity-led person. I like to do lots of different, you know, and it's great to have a kind of two co-directors who are busily going, that's lovely, Ian, that's great, fabulous idea, not yet. You know, when this bit works, then maybe we can do the exciting new stuff. And so that I very much had to learn, and it's been a useful lesson to kind of, yes, you have to focus on what you're doing, but also you have to look at the data and go, is this actually doing what we think it is? Yeah, that makes absolute perfect sense. And I think you're aware we're a British coaching organisation. I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, or life in general. It's interesting. So I am going to name checking. So as a chap, when I was a kid, my swimming instructor was a guy called Paul Branch. And Paul was the best coach I ever worked with, full stop. And he was a swimming coach and an ice hockey referee, because obviously. And so, you know, you'd end up getting coaching sessions with him with like a broken arm or on crutches or various bits and pieces because he'd been bashed up at the weekend. I don't know how, well, I didn't know how he did it at the time, but I do now. I would have run through a brick wall for that guy and then reassembled it and done it again, because he taught me that I could do it.
Yes.
And that was the thing. It was, you know, I wouldn't be asking you to do it if I didn't think you could do it. So go ahead and do it. And he removed the imposter syndrome. He removed the kind of the anxiety and the thought process around, can you do this? To go, this is what we're doing. We've been working up to this to this point. You've hit all the things that I've hit, yeah, maybe we missed that one, but we went back and we hit it again. So you can do it, and I know you can do it, and I wouldn't be asking you to do it if you couldn't do it. And it kind of, he was fantastic on a personal level, and then kind of it's always, that's always stuck with me. The other thing is professionally, was a partner I worked with in London, and he's not a coach per se, but a manager. And we had a client, we're on a conference call, big client asked the question, what about X? I answered. And then the client then said, well, what do you think? Let's call him Dave, not his real name for these purposes. And he said, we've already heard. I was, what, sorry? I said, well, Ian's answered the question. Yeah, but I want your opinion. It's like, well, he's on my team. And he's on my team, and this is what he does for a living. So all I'm going to do is say what he said, and he's already said it, so I'm not going to bother.
Brilliant.
It really stuck with me, because it was the same, but in a different context. It's like, I know you can do it. What's the problem? And that's I've tried and failed to emulate both of them in my professional life. One day I might be as good as both as either, or half as good as either of them, but we'll see.
Wonderful. What a great stories. And you've just mentioned swimming there, and I remember it. There was an analogy I picked up from watching my daughter learn to swim, about business coaching and doing what I think we both do is, I remember she was really struggling learning to swim, and she would work so hard at it, and she was flailing around and just trying to keep up. And I remember the lady that got her, and she got her, the lady was suddenly sort of up to waist high, and she just got my daughter to lay back and relax and just cupped her neck just so she could support her, just float. And she just let her float for a minute, and she felt safe and secure. And then she said, just start to kick your legs a bit and just start to move your arms a bit. And she started moving. And then after a little bit, she just took the hand away gently. And my daughter just moved quite gracefully and easily across the surface. And it just hit me as a business coach that, sometimes it's a big part of what we do is people work so hard in business, so hard to sometimes not get the results they deserve. When sometimes it's that relax, slow down, there might be a better way. And that every time, to talk about swimming just really brought that home again.
Absolutely. And it's, don't just do something, stand there.
Yeah.
And it is the inversion of the classic, but it works, because if you're spending all of your energy flailing around for entirely understandable reasons, then
absolutely,
you've got none left to give that extra push where it's needed, or to actually step back and look at what it is you're trying to achieve. And there are so many kind of sporting analogies that transcend to business, but that's definitely a good one.
Well, I said the one that comes to mind is slow down to speed up. I use that a lot. Slow down to speed up.
Absolutely, yeah.
But we have come on to the topic of quotes or sayings. Have you got a few of your favourite quotes or sayings that you use quite regularly in and around business?
One I nicked from a university friend of mine, which is, if it was easy, we'd have already done it. Which is that I've probably got far too many, and the team are probably sick of hearing all of them. But yeah, there's that one. There's the kind of that's probably quite a few, but it kind of varies from time to time. Sorry,
okay.
one might well pop back into my head when I think about it.
It's all good. It's all good. If any do, please. I love to pick them up and use them. So I've got some really great ones from doing this interview.
Yeah,
that are really, I think, really relevant. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and one lady said, and I never heard it before, but it absolutely makes sense. And she said, "We've all survived 100% of the challenges we've had over time."
Yeah, Oh, that's
And
great.
that's quite a cool thing.
Like
It's an
that.
obvious thing to say, but it's quite cool, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the other one that I love, which is a guy called Oscar who runs a couple of chains of restaurants, and I've heard this quote in many different ways, but this one was so simple, which was don't look back because we're not going in that direction. Yeah. And but anyway, sorry, I'll throw a few in there. But if
yeah,
we
no,
come,
that's great. Yeah, my brain will probably find, but yeah, unfortunately, I am rather a automatic for various bits and pieces of like film and pop culture and all the rest of it at work. I've realised with this that I'm now getting old. Because I've popped some of them into conversations with our team who've all looked at me very blankly, yeah, so there we are.
Yes, we need to upgrade them, don't we? I think over time and keep them relevant, I guess. And what would you say you've learned about yourself as you've grown your business and through your career?
Ooh, that is an interesting one. I think a lot is the honest answer, but I think that the biggest thing is that for me, it's that I can't be inauthentic, and that's hard in some respects, because by that you've got to be kind of vulnerable and honest and various other bits and pieces, but I can't be anybody else but me. And I spent a lot of my, my autism diagnosis came in my late 30s. So I spent a life trying to be somebody else and pass for human and pretend to be somebody else, and I can't do it. And so I've kind of learned that, like it or not, in order to be successful in doing things, for me, I have to do it as me and my way. Yeah. Now, that might not necessarily be conventional or the way that it's supposed to be, but I think that all of the poor decisions I have made have been made based on kind of looking at and going, oh, what would X do? Well, actually, that's irrelevant because they don't exist. So I think that for me, that's the biggest thing that I've learned about myself, is that I have to be authentic. That can also cause challenges. I describe one particular phrase as the autistic landmine, which is the question, what do you think? Now, it turns out that when people ask that question, what they mean is, please say nice things about what I've done, as opposed to, what do you think? And so on various occasions, I've told them, and that wasn't what they were looking for. So there needs to be kind of a bit of check and balance, but I have to do it. Yeah, I have to be me, because otherwise I'm just trying to, I spend the entire time trying to catch up with my own.
Yes. Totally. Yeah, make perfect sense. And I guess it's just helping people understand what that means in those contexts of But yeah, totally. Yeah, well, not totally get it, but I do get it in that sort of context. So just looking, start to look forward. What does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you face, if any?
I think the future is to look to get more lawyers to join with us to enjoy work. We've just opened up in Manchester, so we've crossed the Pennines. Obviously, I realise that the Yorkshire audience will now never speak to me again.
Absolutely, we're done.
Exactly, that's it. Oh, game over. I get it. But so now got Manchester and Leeds, focusing on growing those and growing the headcount in Manchester to get the same kind of locally based teams we've got here in Leeds. So that's very much the future of kind of, for want of a better description, the gospel of Legal Studio. Look, you can enjoy work, you can do this. Yes, you have to create your own, you have to generate and create your own business with it, absolutely. But we'll give you the tools and the processes and the system, the coaching, the development, the assistance to help with that. I think in terms of the challenges, I think the challenges are for any professional services business are two. In the moment, I think the first is the giant big R word. There is, by all accounts, by all looks, notwithstanding politically, whichever side of the spectrum you're on, we're probably going to get some form of recession. The question is how deep and how long, and kind of preparing everybody to deal with that and what that means, and looking at how you can continue to talk about that value proposition you made, which is, you know, people's discretionary spend is going to be considerably less. So how do we stay at the forefront of their attention and convert that? Yeah. And then the second thing, and again, any professional services business in relation to this, but particularly law firms, it's called the war on talent. I think that's a misnomer. I think it's about talent magnetism, which is creating your proposition so that if there is talent out there, you're drawing in the right stuff, but you're repelling the wrong. And that, for me, is our biggest challenge, is to make sure that our proposition and what we're looking for is as clear as it can be and as well known as it can be, so that we've got the opportunity to convert. You know, this is a big change for lawyers, and it's not going to happen overnight. Yes. And it's not a job. So not handing you out jobs, it's always going to be a smaller, more entrepreneurial pool, but we need to set our stall out as to exactly which bit of that smaller entrepreneurial pool we are looking for.
But brilliant. We do a lot of work with people attracting both. I mean, for me, recruitment is a separate form of marketing. It's finding people. Yeah. So it's the same thing. And both, for me, both recruitment and marketing, the core should be vision, values, and purpose of the organisation. I believe for a long time that a good relationship come with a match of goals. We both want to achieve the same thing, whether that's, you know, building businesses, building legal practices. But great relationships come with a match of values, i.e. we both think these things are important. But very few organisations, whether it's marketing or recruitment, use or put their values and their vision at the core. And so they get people that might want to grow a legal practice, but don't do it, won't want to do it in an aligned manner with you guys and what your values are. And I think it's so key to be really out there. And it comes back to the idea of being authentic. This is who we are. Yeah. If you like that, come on board. You're going to love it. If you don't, jog on. It's better that you jog on for everybody.
Absolutely. And you know, going back to the quote points is one that I use from time to time, which is, you know, character is the thing you do when no one's watching. And that, you know, if you recruit and hire on character, then you can always bluntly teach skill, or you can assist with skill, or whatever it may be. But if you don't have an alignment and a fit based on, you know, your character matching our culture, then nobody's going to enjoy this. So
100%. We've built a whole recruitment process around recruiting on values and behaviours as opposed to skills. In fact, funny enough, I was talking to a doctor that's building a number of practices, private practices across the UK. And, you know, I said that the standard proposition of recruitment is people recruit on experience but sack on attitude. Yeah. And so let's cut to the chase and recruit on attitude, given a base level of experience. I have to say to him, I hope if I ever need a brain surgeon, they'll have a little bit of skill and expertise. Not just really enthusiastic to get stuck in, but
exactly. Yeah. You know, but then you see, the thing is, it's about designing the recruitment process to look for those character traits that are there. You know, so for example, using that, you know, you don't want someone who's got enthusiasm considerably outstripping their skill. Well, then the interview is 10:15, and please don't be early. You know, and if they're there at 5 minutes past 10, jumping up and down, well, actually, mate, we'll see. But the process itself, right? So there's a fundamental part of the character there, which is that, notwithstanding that, they just can't contain the interview. They're going to get there early. Yeah. Right. Well, hang on. Does that fit with what we were looking for with that brain surgeon? And it's difficult to convey to people how you design a process to look for something that historically they never have. It's, you know, what does the CV say, and can they answer these stock questions? Well, great, but that's a one-off, you know. And what you want is to look at what that person is like, as opposed to can they perform on the day.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. We've developed sort of 6-stage process that is very much about its values and behaviours over skills. Obviously, there's a point at which you have to achieve a certain level of qualification, depending on the role. You know, obviously that's required. That's, as I say, with the brain surgery, one probably be quite high. But above that, it's all about attitude. All about attitude. And if you get that right, then we just get, you know, it becomes so much more simple. And we attract, you know, as I say, we attract the right people. They're going to perform because they want to, because they love who we are and what we do because we've told them, and they're aligned.
Exactly.
So just look at a little bit, a couple of your thoughts is, what would you say to anyone that was thinking of going into business right now, Ian?
I think right now there'll be a lot of scaremongering, fearmongering, and a lot of people focusing on why it won't work. So what I would say to anybody who's thinking of going into business is, look, challenging times are often the right time, you know, and the reality is, if you hang around waiting for the perfect time, you're going to end up regretting it. And, you know, again, another probably quote-o-matic, you only regret things that you don't do. And if you've got a vision, if you've got an idea, if you've got a plan, there's never a right time other than now. And, you know, yes, going back to that, the numbers don't lie. Cost it, plan it, make sure that there is a viable thing there. But if there is, there's probably never a better time to launch a business than coming into a set of challenging economic circumstances. Yeah. Because if you're focused on that right thing, which is the value proposition, what do we bring? What problem do we solve? How do we do it that nobody else, in the way that nobody else does? You will pick up business from the incumbents who aren't going to be doing that because they've never had to, and they don't know how to do it because they've never had to actually fight for this. So I think, you know, for me, it's, yeah, sure, do your due diligence on your idea, but if you've got it, now's a damn good time to launch it.
Brilliant. Love that. Absolutely love that. And if you started again, is there anything you do differently?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd be much more focused on that value proposition and exactly what part of that small pool we are looking for. Because we very much started as a, whatever it is you want to do, come on down, we're here. And that doesn't work. It's tempting, and I know why we did it. And we grabbed anything that moved and we turned it into cash because we thought we needed to. Absolutely. But then what you end up with the wrong people, the wrong clients, and then you're looking at what you're doing and going, well, this is in fact, this is worse than the job I had, and at least then I got paid. And so I would be laser focused now on what is it that we need for resourcing, what are we screaming for, and who is it that we can help? How can we help them? And who exactly, and I mean really exactly, are we looking for?
Brilliant. Absolutely perfect. It's I couldn't agree more that getting that right is really, really key. It's a funny thing, and again, as I think I said earlier, I do a lot of sales training, and I think one of the biggest fallacies in sales is a crappy prospect will somehow magically turn into a brilliant client when they sign up. And it's like, no, a crappy prospect will be a crappy client. It's like, sorry, there's no other way.
Yeah, it's like clients that owe you money. They're not clients, they're debtors.
No, absolutely.
They are. Now, but once you're getting yourself into that headspace is really hard because, you know, you want to make it successful. You want to show that people you can do it. And also in that kind of youthful exuberance of the start, you're absolutely convinced you can convince everybody about the product and service that you've got. I'm sorry, you can't. There will be some people who don't want it, don't see the value of it, know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. You don't want them. Moving on.
Absolutely. And finally, what would be the best advice you could give to an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do so?
Ask yourself what you want, not what does society think you should do, what is it that the track that you're on. It's what do you want and what do you want to do, and is this what you want rather than what's expected. Yes,
bang on. Well, Ian, thank you so much. It's been really fascinating, and I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I think there's so many takeaways from what we've talked about today, and I really appreciate it. And if there was anybody, but especially I guess any lawyers out there watching this, what's the best way of getting in touch with you guys?
So there's two ways. Either find me on LinkedIn, send me a message there. So you'll find me there, or our email address for kind of every inquiry is hello@legalstudio.co.uk. Drop me an email. Happy to have a confidential discussion about what it is you're looking for and maybe whether we can help you provide it.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Well, Ian, again, thank you so much, and be great to catch up with you in some point in the future to see things how things are developing.
Sounds great, Chris, and thank you again for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.